Hello, hello. What is going on, everybody? It is time for This Week in Perfect Team. And I'm going to show myself here in a moment, I promise. Here I am. What's going on, everybody? I'm in for Dish. I'm Paul Spohr, the content director here, and I'm joined by a very special guest, Bailey of Foolish Baseball. Bailey, how's it going?
It's going well. Is everything good? Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Can see you. I can hear you. Chat. Can you all hear both of us just fine here? I think it's a go here based on my my levels. Everything looks good. Everyone's saying they can see it. We're on top of each other over here. This is how it's going to work best for the content. But Bailey, how's it going, man? It's great to have you on.
I'm thrilled to be a part of this. You know, this is sort of a full circle moment for me, right? Like I started my YouTube career as an out-of-the-park baseball YouTuber. I think this is probably the 18 or the 19 edition of the game. And now here I am, approximately 5 years later, and we have a set in Perfect Team about Foolish Baseball.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, that's how I found you. I found you from the Verlander video. I still remember in the airport seeing it. A million people sent it to me because I'm obviously a huge Verlander fan. And then I started watching all your other stuff, including the OOTP stuff. And you've still been doing that every once in a while. In fact, you played a little bit this year, but the trades got a little bit wonky. So I think you might be preparing for maybe a rerun of the 2023 season because you had some pretty insane trades in your first try, right?
Yeah, definitely. But you know, that's kind of how it is sometimes. It takes a few weeks after the game is released to sort of reach a stable level on those things. And yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more OOTP content. I remember, I guess it was during the lockout. I did this really nice long series where I simulated 10 years, almost an alternative history.
That was awesome.
It was from 2012 to 2022, I guess, and it was so fun to see different players pop up that you would never expect to.
No, that was a lot of fun with that one. I loved that 10-year series, and I think you do a great job of presenting OOTP content, right? It's a really fun game to play. A lot of us enjoy doing it, but it can be difficult to kind of create those stories and bring them to life, and I think you do an excellent job with that. And you have, I believe, a Rangers and White Sox series as well that are older on your channel, but are definitely out there and pretty detailed. Do I have the two teams right?
Yes, the first series I ever did was White Sox. That was when I was getting started as a YouTuber in general, and then the Rangers one is more recent. That was when, by that point, I was already more known for other work, but yes.
So when you made your pivot and you started making the baseball bits videos, I know that you also mixed in some football videos. Don't you have an arm punt video? What led to that transition from OOTP into the video essays?
Well, it was actually an easier transition than you may think, just because, you know, OOTP players are, you know, with all due respect, baseball
gigantic
sickos.
Nerds. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're
that works too.
Sickos. And so, because I'd already sort of cultivated an audience of, I think it was around 800 subscribers at that time, you know, pivoting to a different type of content, you know, is hard on YouTube, but when you're able to pivot it to something that you know your audience is probably already going to be interested in, then it's not so difficult.
No, I think that definitely makes sense. By the way, I don't know if you saw Bill Burr was in the booth with Boston yesterday, and there's a really funny viral clip where he's like, can somebody look up the record on that? I know there's some nerd with a laptop over here. Oh, let me just check out Baseball Reference. And I was like, you know what? He's talking directly about me. And for the first time in my life, Bill Burr talking about me, even if indirectly, made me happy there. So yeah, I mean, we embrace the nerd tag here, right? Baseball is a nerdy sport. That's not a negative, and I think it fit perfectly with the video essays. Most of y'all are probably familiar with Foolish. If not, definitely need to go out and check out some of his videos. !Foolish. You can see his wide range of videos. How many total do you have? Do you know exactly how many videos you have?
I think it's approximately 60. And what's good about them is that they're, for the most part, evergreen.
Yes.
Which means, you know, you could binge watch them, you know, ones that are a few years old, and you know, it'll still have good information. It won't be like, oh, here are my predictions for the 2021 World Series or anything like that.
Exactly. And you have Foolish Bailey, which is a secondary channel that has baseball stuff, but also you mix in some kind of off the beaten path stuff. Give us a little insights into Foolish Bailey, your second channel.
Well, it's just fun to be able to be creative in a way that isn't constrained by like the 15-minute video essay format. Sometimes I have things I want to do that I want to talk about that wouldn't necessarily fit what I do on my main channel, Foolish Baseball. And for that, now I have Foolish Bailey, and I've been working on that, for about a couple years now, and it's been fun seeing that grow as well.
It's been a lot of fun. I love the stat line scouting. The most recent video you did will actually have some impact on today's set that we'll get into. I do want to talk about a negative moment, if I can, for a moment, because it's now no longer as negative. You briefly lost the channel. You became a big... you were hawking Teslas left and right or whatever. What happened with that when you lost the channel? Because I know that was a big moment in the baseball community. We were all like really nervous that was maybe not permanent, but that maybe you lose the videos. So what happened when your channel got hacked and taken over?
Yeah, I fell for basically a phishing email scam, and I want to be very clear. It was pretty well done. It was not like someone emailed me and was like, "Hello, I am Mike Trout. Please download virus.exe." It was a little more complicated than that.
Yeah.
But it's actually a pretty common thing that's happened on YouTube. Some other big
Yep.
YouTubers have been hit by it. Linus Tech Tips, who's probably the one that I watched, the big one, he got hit by that.
That was crazy.
Not that long ago, actually. And yeah, so I was basically off the air for about a week there. I'm kind of thankful it happened during February rather than during
Now.
baseball season. Like now would be a bad time.
Yep.
But yeah, and basically it was just trying to scam people into donating it cryptocurrency. So I hope nobody fell for that. If you gave me cryptocurrency with the expectation I'm going to double it, if I'm not going to.
It's not coming through. Stop holding.
I promise you I would, but I don't know how. But yeah, so I got it back after a week, and thankfully, basically the scam, that when it takes over, it doesn't delete any videos, it just hides them. So once I got control of the channel, I was able to make my videos public again, and now it's honestly as if it never happened.
Exactly. You would never know if I hadn't brought it up. So what was the better crypto scam in the baseball community? Your channel getting hacked or Jeff Passan's Twitter getting hacked?
I mean, Passan's just because of the timing, right? Because that was the day the lockout ended.
Exactly.
I also want to say a shout outs to I was watching a Nationals game the other day, and they've still got the whole Terra Club and all that situation going on. So
That was incredible. But don't get scammed, y'all. Even if it does look legit, again, Bailey's not going to double your crypto money at all. Bailey, this next part, I think you could probably help here, but I'll go ahead and take the reins over because both of us use a website quite often, and I don't have as smooth of a transition as our boy Dish into the ad for Stathead Baseball, powered by Baseball Reference. But you can use code 23OOTP25 for 25% off an annual I almost said prescription, subscription over there for baseball or all of the sports. I know you use it a lot in your videos. Can you give us a few insights into how the Stathead program helps you when you're making baseball bits?
yeah, it's just so ubiquitous in the industry. I think if anyone has any aspirations to create any sort of baseball content, I mean, this is a tool I use daily. So I love Stathead, and I have a really good relationship with the people over there at Sports Reference, and yeah, just definitely recommend checking it out. In fact, I have a video on my channel that's sort of, or my Foolish Bailey channel, that's sort of a Stathead demo in case people are curious to see what you can do with it.
Highly recommend checking that out. And you often highlight things that you do with Baseball Reference, whether it's using Stathead or just the reference site in general. An amazing site. Obviously, people know I work at Fangraphs. I use both every single day of my life. There's no one site. You should be using all the amazing baseball sites out there. Throw in Baseball Savant, the many wonderful sites with great content and articles too. But let's go ahead and get into some content. We're going to start, before we get into the cards curated from your videos, we're going to start with a LE that kind of fits the theme of the season. It's summer, so we had to do a Champ Summers from the Detroit Tigers. First off, Bailey, let me ask you, are you familiar with Champ Summers? Do you know who this guy is?
I'm not familiar with Champ Summers. He sounds almost fictional to me. Like if I had to make up the name of a baseball player or someone involved in some way, I would call them Champ Summers.
Absolutely. I mean, Champ Summers is straight out of Super Mega Baseball, but we obviously had to come out with something summer related. So Champ Summer and a Tiger. I mean, come on, it's the perfect fit here as a Tigers fan. The interesting thing is why he is nicknamed Champ, Bailey. It's because, and this is his own words, it's because he was an ugly child and his dad nicknamed him Champ under the idea that he looked like he had gone 10 rounds with Joe Louis. That seems kind of mean from your dad. But then it's a cool nickname, right? So it's kind of a plus and minus sort of deal. He's calling you ugly, but Champ is undeniably a dope nickname, no?
No, definitely. I mean, my parents lovingly would call me a doofus sometimes, so it's better than being named Doofus Summers, you know?
True. Doofus Summers would not work. Doofenshmirtz, that works. Doofensummers, not so much. So Champ Summers was a big-time platoon bat, played for several teams. The Tigers, here's what we highlighted with 1979. One of his best years. 91% of his plate appearances came against right-handers. I mentioned that his dad nicknamed him because he was ugly. He really excelled with Detroit from 1979 to 81 with a 137 WRC plus and 887 plate appearances. You can see here he's kind of a righty destroyer. You don't really want to use him against lefties, and it's kind of a DH bat for sure, but for Tigers theme teams, and if you have a theme team that just has guys named Champ, you're going to want Champ Summers. But let's go ahead and get into the foolish content, because you've covered so many players over the 60-some videos that we could have gone a lot of different ways, right? Everyone knows some of the superstars that you've covered, maybe some of the lesser knowns, and that's where we're going to start, is with the lesser known. And if I'm going to be honest off the top here, this is not a premier card in terms of the defense, and it's a catcher because you highlighted a video where Rod Barajas was known for setting the record for the worst caught stealing rate ever. And I wanted to put that on a card to highlight it because I know some people use a worst defense possible team. They might have just gotten their catcher here. 6% caught stealing rate, Bailey. How did Rod Barajas do it, and what led you to make that video?
Yeah, it was a video idea that sort of evolved over time, because at first I, was just obsessed with the raw caught stealing metrics. I think it was like 93 stolen bases to 5 caught stealings. Crazy. Or something approximately like that. Over time, it sort of evolved because I realized that Barajas was just as much a victim of, his age and as he was the Pirates organization's philosophy. Their pitchers were really slow to the plate with runners on. They're basically taught to ignore that aspect of the game and just focus on executing the pitch. I learned later, after I published a video, that they weren't even really practicing pickoff moves in the minors. So,
wow.
So Rod Barajas, it's just sort of an interesting baseball story where, a guy was kind of left out there to hang out to dry. And, that's the story of Rod Barajas. Was a very good journeyman catcher before his last season.
He really was, and this was the last season. I mentioned here 31% caught stealing rate from 99 to 2011, which was totally fine. That was around league average a lot of different years. So as somebody immediately put in the chat, it was not his fault. Your video definitely highlights that. There will be a playlist with all the videos of the players featured here. So for those of you that haven't watched Bailey's videos, you can definitely check those out. I didn't make the playlist available yet because then people would, go check it out and see who's coming. Our next guy also a little bit more of a negative slant on his video because this pitcher, Drew Hutchison, was juxtaposed with Jacob deGrom to show how important run support is to everyone's favorite category, pitcher wins. So I did a card on his 2015 season when he put up a 5.57 ERA, 148 whip, 19% K rate, 7% walk rate in 158 innings. But he tied for 9th in wins, and he didn't even qualify for the ERA title, which means 162 plus innings. He had a very nice 6.9 runs per game of run support. That was the best in MLB, minimum 20 starts. This was a great video because, again, you really got to the point of like, hey, this is why you got to be careful with win-loss record. Talk to us about the Drew Hutchison video, especially juxtaposed against Jacob deGrom, who struggled so long with the Mets to get support.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a guy who's going to strike out a bunch of people or have like a low ERA or a FIP or a WHIP or whatever on your perfect team, this might not be your guy. But if you want a winner, that's what Drew Hutchison is. He's a
proven winner.
He went 13-5. deGrom, won a Cy Young going 10-9 or whatever it was, and for me personally, give me the guy that got 13 wins.
I need the dubs. I absolutely need those pitcher dubs. You can see here, and again, just going to be honest about it, this is not going to be the premier card. That pitcher BABIP at 25 is tough, but I wanted to highlight Drew Hutchison because that is one of my favorite videos of yours, and I do think it's a great way. Sometimes with StatHead people talking to more casual fans in baseball, can get a bit condescending and really lose the plot with trying to bring people on the side of stats by saying, you use average, you're stupid. You use win-loss, you're stupid. A video like yours highlights the issues with that and the problems of going off win-loss record to judge talent without patronizing or talking down to the people in question. So I think it's a very good video. I've referenced it multiple times when talking with people who want to cite a win-loss record to me. I say, watch this video. Run support is so very important. Drew Hutchison's was off the charts in 2015, and that's how he was tied for 9th in wins. Our next guy, if I am to believe you, he forced you to make the video. I don't want to say it was at gunpoint or anything, but I know that he forced you under duress. That's what I heard. Lucas Giolito is our next guy here. He gets a bronze for his 2019 season, which was a breakout season for him. 3.41 ERA, 106 WHIP, 32% K rate. He went from an MLB worst 6.13 ERA to a top 6 Cy Young finish. And again, forced Bailey to make the video about Giolito. Talk to us about the Giolito video. You do have a little bit of a relationship with him. So how did that video come to be?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think compared to a lot of other people, at least the big ones in like the baseball content creation community, I don't have like that strong of ties to players. I didn't necessarily get into this to talk to baseball players or interview them or anything like that. But Lucas Giolito, a couple years ago now, reached out to me, and I knew he'd watched the videos before, so I liked him for that. And he said, I want you to make a baseball bits about me. And so that's exactly what we did. We sat down, I interviewed him for it. We tried to sort of decide what we were going to focus on. Like, he wanted to talk about his changeup, for example, so a lot of the video is about that. And so it's cool. Just every now and then I have a guy like Lucas Giolito come along and just ever so gracious, and we can get to work and do some really cool stuff.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's kind of in the Twitch community. I know he streamed a bit during the pandemic. Just seems like a really good dude, and basically kind of developed himself. Things weren't really going well there in Chicago. The development wasn't happening. I mentioned how tough his season was before 2019, but he took it upon himself to go out and get better, turned himself into a really strong pitcher, had not similar struggles. He didn't have a 6.13 ERA, but had some struggles last year, and again, got himself back on track to really put himself back to where we expect Lucas Giolito to be, which is as a solid top-line starter. Let's go old school a little bit here because, again, you're not just covering new era players. You are dipping back into history, and you covered a guy who had the single most important hit in baseball history, or maybe just playoff history, but it is Hal Smith, catcher for the Pirates. The interesting thing about him, not only that he had the most important championship win probability added hit ever, but he was one of 2 Hal Smiths who were both catchers in the same era, and he's Tim Flannery's uncle, who was a former player as well as a former base coach for those quality Giants teams that were winning the World Series. So talk to us about how you featured Hal Smith in that win probability video from the 1960 World Series that the Pirates beat the Yankees in.
Yeah, so this is a good example of where StatHead comes in handy too, because the stat at play here is championship win probability added. How much did the hit add to the probability that his team will win the championship? And this is the most pivotal play in MLB history by championship win probability added. It's forgotten because Mazeroski would later walk off the game in the 9th.
Yep.
But that was from a position where both teams were tied. So even if he hadn't done that, it would have gone extras and been basically a 50-50 proposition between the Pirates and the Yankees in Game 7 of the 1960 World Series. Whereas Hal Smith, in the 8th inning, took the Pirates from a losing position to a winning one with his 3-run home run, and that's what makes it the most pivotal play. And it's somewhat forgotten now. I just want to take some time to celebrate it. By the way, two Pirates catchers, dominating so far.
Unbelievable here. And neither, if you had said name some Pirates catchers that you think might get cards on a Foolish Baseball set, well, if they knew your videos, they would know Rod Barajas. But yeah, Hal Smith, Rod Barajas, a couple of Pirates catchers. And I'm still blown away that there were 2 Hal Smiths, both catchers, in that same era there. And this is a pretty solid silver card here. Can hit righties and lefties. He was a nice hitter, and in that 1960 season, he had a 135 WRC plus. That's weighted runs created plus. 100 is average, so he was 35% better than league average. He was a backup to Smokey Burgess, who was also a fantastic catcher. I think that's another interesting thing about this, is that Hal Smith wasn't even the starter. Did he start that game, Bailey? I can't remember, and I don't mean to put you on the spot if you don't remember, but did Hal Smith even start that game?
I think the answer to that is no. We can check that out real quick, but for now I'm going to say no.
That makes it even more impressive, to be honest, that he came in and had that huge clutch hit as a backup catcher. So Hal Smith, 1960 catcher. Let's keep going deep in the recesses of history and talk about Bobby Wallace, the accidental Hall of Famer, a 1901 card featuring silver 72 rated card featuring his 1901 season, 324 average, 351 OBP, 451 slug, 2 homers, 15 steals, 91 ribbies. I'm very impressed by 91 ribbies with 2 homers, a 126 WRC plus. This was his best WAR, a 7.1 F4, that's Fangraphs WAR. He would have won a ton of Gold Gloves had they existed, and he led baseball with 72 triples from 1897 to 1901. Can you tell us a bit about Bobby Wallace and how he's the accidental Hall of Famer?
Well, first of all, I would definitely use that card. That's
Yeah.
definitely the type of player I would enjoy having on my team. But yeah, Bobby Wallace. I called him the accidental Hall of Famer. He got in through the Veterans Committee, and there's a lot of sort of questionable picks that make it to the Hall of Fame through those means. And yet, the reason he got in through the Veterans Committee is because he was completely overlooked in the voting. And, it turns out now with some of the modern metrics we have, he's like a 76 WAR career guy, which would make you pretty much, a no-doubter. It's the most WAR anyone would have, that would not be in the Hall of Fame, besides those that are scandalized by other things, like,
Correct.
Pete Rose or the steroid guys or whatever. And so, yeah, that's Bobby Wallace. That's why I call him the accidental Hall of Famer, because there are guys out there like Bill Dallin or Jack Glasscock, who were similar players during that era, who are, long gone, and yet, still waiting to get in and still coming up on some of these era votes. Whereas Bobby Wallace managed to make his way in because, honestly, the Veterans Committee was sort of stacked in his favor with guys like Branch Rickey.
That's the interesting thing about the Veterans Committee, too, is it really matters who's in there that's on your side. And, I hate to disparage somebody who got in. It's not their fault. I wouldn't expect, like, Harold Baines to be like, no, thank you, guys. I'm not deserving. But, guys like that can take heat from the Veterans Committee picks, even though it's like, hey, he's in. I don't want to ruin their parade. So Bobby Wallace, the accidental Hall of Famer. Harold Baines, maybe an accidental Hall of Famer in his own right, despite being a very good hitter. Let's jump a couple levels here. No golds. We're gonna go right to diamonds. We got a couple diamonds. We're gonna stay old school era. This guy, interestingly enough, pitched in the 1800s and yet has one of the best Twitter accounts going. It is indeed Old Hoss Radbourn here, and we're going to talk about his 1884 season. I put 1882 up there, I think, by accident, but he had 59 or 60 wins, and we'll talk about that in a moment. 138 ERA, 092 WHIP in 679 innings. 73 of 73 starts were complete games, won all 3 games of the 1884 World Series, and he's reportedly the eldest of Hosses, although that is not confirmed, and StatHead couldn't tell me whether or not he was the oldest of Hosses. He does have a 125 stamina. That is best in the game, folks. You want Old Hoss Radbourn to pitch, put him out there, he'll pitch for you. A 94 diamond. Talk to us about Old Hoss Radbourn and his 59 or 60 win season with 8 billion innings pitched.
Yeah, it was basically the story of it is that his team, I think it was the Providence Grays, they had 2 really good pitchers. It was him and Charlie Sweeney. And Charlie Sweeney was kind of a young hot shot, liked to booze it up a little bit, and I think eventually got kicked off the team. And so they reached this point where Old Hoss Radbourn was really the only pitcher they had. So for the final stretch of the season, I don't know, last 30 games or so, he started every game and threw a complete game every game. And he led them to, they won the Temple Cup or whatever it was back then, which was like a precursor to the World Series. But yeah, that's the story of Old Hoss Radbourn. He's just... he's a relic from a bygone era. He put up stats that we will never see again in
Not even
the
close.
history of professional baseball. And yeah, he runs one of the best Twitter accounts in the game.
It's truly insane. And so we had to give him the crazy stamina there. 679 innings, 73 complete games. And yeah, you know, it's a different era, but it's still eye-popping numbers. It's not like he didn't lead the league in a bunch of stuff, even for the era. And as chat mentions, a glorious mustache as well. Our next guy, we could have gone negative on, made like an iron card kind of exposing the negativity of what happened, because your video does cover a down period for this guy. But I went the other route. I highlighted his best season. It is 94 Baltimore Oriole Chris Davis from the 2013 season. But you did a fantastic video highlighting the trials and tribulations of his 0 for 54 run, which was really difficult, man. I like Chris Davis. I root for him. And reading all the stuff during that, I really felt bad for Davis, what he was going through. You know, he's the kind of guy that seemed to really hate the fact that, you know, he's making all this money to do nothing. Obviously, he likes making the money, but he wants to pull his weight, and he clearly wasn't. That weighed on him as much as it did anybody, but he had a brilliant 2013. I wanted to put a big card out there for that season. Decimated righties, still had big power against lefties. He led baseball in total bases with 370. He was third in the MVP that year to Miggy and Trout, but he led baseball in homers from 2016 to from 2012 to 2016 with 197. But he did suffer that MLB record 0 for 54 run in 2018 into 2019. Can you give us some insights into your Chris Davis video highlighting that unfortunate streak?
Well, it's interesting because such a run would have never happened in today's game with the shift ban. You know, he had
Absolutely.
a lot of hard hit balls that were hitting the shift at, particularly I would say at infielders that were standing well in the grass. You
Yes.
know, yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. It's a reminder that, you know, even the best players, you know, we see, they a lot of times they have those moments where, you know, they're old and it's basically over. You know, you know, he hasn't had a run of futility like Chris Davis had, but I mean, you know, I watched the Tigers trot out Miguel Cabrera, and he can still do some stuff for
But it's
them, but
all
he's just a
arms.
shadow of his former
Yep.
self, you know. And I think that video is just sort of a reminder of, hey, even though, you know, our favorite athletes have these moments, that also doesn't mean we should forget the good times either. So I'm glad that you've gone with a card that really, you know, highlights some of the strong seasons he had, where he was leading the league in home runs for a significant stretch.
Baseball is a cruel mistress. You know, you can be on top of the world and then you can set a record like that. But we're highlighting Chris Davis's excellence. The 2013 season, 53 homers, 138 ribbies, a 1,004 OPS, and a 168 WRC plus. That's 68% better than league average. Absolutely fantastic. Another guy I chose to focus on the positives with him, even though little bit of a negative slant in the video for Mr. Brad Lidge of the Houston Astros. 2003 to 2008, 308 ERA, 118 WHIP with a 31% K rate, two-time 40 plus save seasons, two-time All-Star, two-time top 10 Cy Young finisher. He would unfortunately allow a 1,200-foot homer to Albert Pujols in 2005, and I'm led to believe that that ball still hasn't landed. But I gave him a nice peak card, 155 stuff, 91 movement, 91 homer, 61 BABIP, and 53 control for Brad Lidge. Talk to us a bit about Brad Lidge and that fateful homer against Albert Pujols that, again, I'm not sure has landed yet.
Brad Lidge was one of the first, I'll say, non-Mariano Rivera relievers I remember from like my childhood that was just absolutely dominant. He was just incredible, just strikeout machine. And you know, the narrative I weaved in the video, at least, and the narrative that most people would probably weave, is that when Pujols homered off of him in that NLCS, it sort of broke him, and then he would go on to allow a home run to Scott Pasednik in the World Series, which was the only home run he hit that year, and had some really difficult years after that. Sort of lost the ability to throw his slider. And then he mounted a pretty impressive comeback and just had another career year with the Phillies, and then was perfect in the postseason for them. So it's just a really sort of interesting narrative, particularly how relievers not named Mariano Rivera can have these like crazy ups and downs throughout their careers.
Yeah, it's just the volatility of that position year in, year out. I mean, think about, you know, he's hurt this year due to an unfortunate circumstance, Edwin Diaz. But remember where he was at the beginning of his Mets career. who is this guy? He's a bum. Why'd they even get him from Seattle? They traded this amazing prospect, Jared Kelenic. And then he goes on to be the best reliever in baseball for a few years. The only thing that could stop him was that celebration injury. So it's the sample size, though, right? The fact that it's 60 innings a year, that's just simply not that much. And if the ball goes against you a little bit, or your command is off for a couple of those 6 months, you can really sink. And especially a guy like Lidge, who was never known for command and control, just that nasty stuff. When people aren't chasing it out of the zone, you get a lot of walks. And we're kind of seeing that with like somebody like a Craig Kimbrell, who used to be top of the world and now showing his mortality. So yeah, Brad Lidge, nice little card there if you want to go with him as a reliever. Now, we had to go for a 100 player, and you had a lot of options. You've covered some premium players without a doubt. And the guy that we highlighted was another one of my favorite videos of yours, and I am going to kiss up because I love all your videos. I really do. We watch them on my stream. I make sure everyone goes and drops likes on them. Don't worry, I know I'm robbing some views from you, but I make sure we go get that engagement going when we check them out on stream. But I absolutely love the video that you did highlighting Greg Maddux. And the fact that he had that, 79 pitch shutout, and then you did a breakdown of just exactly where were those pitches, because there's some dispute on that, right? Can you talk to us about Greg Maddux and his amazing outing, and can you explain to people what a MADDUX is, because it's an actual stat that a lot of us adhere to. I don't think it's in StatHead just yet, but what is a MADDUX, and what was your video about Greg Maddux?
Well, I'll start with the MADDUX definition. And a MADDUX is a complete game shutout under 100 pitches. And shockingly, the all-time career leader in MADDUXs is none other than Greg Maddux by a pretty significant margin. Yeah, as far as the video I worked on, it was actually not about a MADDUX, because with the caveat being he did allow a couple runs in that game. But he threw a complete game versus Chicago Cubs. I think it was, I want to say July 2nd, 1997. And most places that wrote about it would say 76. If you checked on Baseball Reference, it would say 77. On the broadcast, when it concluded, it said 78. And I had to, basically what happened is I just was really hoping that the full recording of this game would come out someday, and someone had it. Someone had it on a VHS tape. They ripped it and put it on YouTube, and then I was able to do a video about it and actually count the pitches, chart them one by one, and the conclusion was 78 pitches. So with the Greg Maddux video, I was able to effectively change baseball history.
It's amazing. That is so cool. And I remember a lot of that happening early in the internet era, because I'm ancient. I'm a complete fossil. And like when Retro Sheet was coming up, you were getting like little news tidbits of like so-and-so's RBIs from 1952 are now 86 instead of 84, stuff like that. And so basically at the point you made that Maddux video, we kind of figured, hey, we've done all that, right? All the stats that are now current. And it's like, wait a minute, I've got one for you. This Greg Maddux huge outing here isn't quite the pitch count that we thought. Amazing that somebody had it on VHS and ripped it, though. 78 pitches. That's like 3 innings for so many guys these days, and Maddux completed an entire game. So that's a 100 card. Obviously, it's fantastic. 1997, he was unbelievable. 2.20 ERA, 0.95 WHIP, 20% K rate, 2% walk rate. He did lose the Cy Young to Expos Pedro, but that was actually fair. Pedro had a 1.90 ERA, 0.93 WHIP. He won his 8th of what would be 18 Gold Gloves, and he easily led baseball in walk rate. John Burkett was second at 4%. Now we have a couple more cards. We have a mission card as well as a limited edition. Now, you are known for a handful of, like, you're associated with a handful of players. If I ask you to name like 3 players that you're most associated with that people bring up to you, who would those players be?
I'm going to say Justin Verlander, Jeff Mathis, and David Fletcher.
Thank God you said one of the ones that this player is, because it is indeed Jeff Mathis. He is going to be your mission reward card, and it is for the Iron folks out there, because frankly, Jeff Mathis never was all that much of a hitter, but he was a brilliant defender, and we've highlighted that on this Iron card here. It's a 50 rated card with a 105 catcher ability, 97 arm. Again, not too much on the hitting, a little bit of gap power, a little bit of eye, 60 BABIP, 27 power, 45 avoid K, 74 gap, 76 I. The hitting is not why you're here. This is if you love catcher defense, you play in the Iron tournaments, you're going to do a collection of mission, you're going to do a mission collection, and you're going to get this Jeff Mathis. It's a little bit different. Usually the mission reward is a upper scale diamond or 100, but we went with Jeff Mathis because you are so well known for associating with Jeff Mathis. Where's that association come from? Obviously, the video that you made about him, but what made you so fascinated with Jeff Mathis?
He's just a quintessential foolish baseball type player. It's this association with things that are hard to quantify. We used to not have framing metrics, and now we do, and it revealed Jeff Mathis as being extremely valuable catcher defensively. And even then, that doesn't, reveal sort of the relationships he fostered with starting pitchers over the years, like Jose Fernandez when he was in Miami, or Zach Greinke. He was his personal catcher when they were both in Arizona. So, yeah, it's a celebration of Jeff Mathis, just a guy who hung around the big leagues for so long, really couldn't hit worth a lick
at all,
but just did everything else right, particularly everything you would ever want from the catcher position. And I mean, that's going to be the result that you get in your Iron team if you use this card, because that highly coveted catcher ability is off the charts for that level.
Yeah, he will absolutely enhance your pitchers. I make a joke that I was basically a Jeff Mathis in high school, and not a lot of high school teams were looking for that, catching only type of player. But he hit 200, 272, 272. That's not a typo. His OBP and slug matched in 2018 with a homer, a 47 WRC plus. He was second in framing at 13.1 to Max Stassi in only 524 innings. The Elite Glove fueled a 17-year career. And I just threw this in as a hitting highlight of his. He went 7 for 12 with 5 doubles in the 2009 ALCS. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's probably his best hitting moment, right?
His playoff stats are insane. He also homered off Kershaw in another series.
Yeah, they're actually kind of decent playoff stats, all things considered. And that's the OOTP way. Anybody that's played out OOTP seasons knows that your backup catcher is going to pop off in the playoffs, or your light hitting catcher. Bailey, one time in a playoff series, I had Tomas Nido hit 2 grand slams against me, and I really wanted to flip my table. I couldn't believe it. But it happens, right? Small samples and all that. Next card, our last one. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that's OOTP. Also, you describe yourself as a high school Jeff Mathis. I'm picturing you as more of a high school Grayson Greiner, because aren't you like 7 feet tall?
Yes, but I wasn't in high school. I am 6'5", but I was average height in high school, so that's why I go with that. But I like the Grayson Greiner comp there too. Same thing, can't hit. What anything that highlights how little I could hit. And as a decent defensive catcher would encapsulate my high school career, and that's why I didn't last very long. Our last card for your set is a limited edition, and it does focus on a video that I mentioned is up over at Foolish Bailey, and you talked about your favorite baseball reference page. This is, again, I know I've said it a few different times, another one of my favorites of yours. This skyrocketed to the top of fascinating videos because I did not know who Connie Marrero was, but I quickly learned, and I was endlessly fascinated with that video. You deep dived why it was your favorite baseball reference page. The Cuban superstar joined baseball MLB at age 38, put up a heck of a 1952 season, which is what we've highlighted here with a nice silver limited edition. Bailey, can you tell us a bit about why Connie Marrero is your favorite baseball reference page?
There's so many reasons. He's a 5'5" pitcher. He's basically the shortest pitcher in Major League Baseball in the modern era, at least to throw at least 500 innings. And as a short king, I like that. I'm 5'6", so I was taller than this guy. Let's see here. He lived to be almost 103 years old. He's one of the few players who is both like a MLB player and a centenarian, which means he lived to be over 100. He's actually the second longest living player that played in either the American League or National League ever. He was born in Cuba, and then made his way to the United States, made his major league debut at the age of like 38, pitched until he was like 43, was just kind of a total junk baller. And I think you see his repertoire there sort of reflects that. He was most known for his curveball than anything, and then went back to Cuba and lived there the rest of his life, because he went back there before the revolution and stayed. So it's just a fascinating baseball life, and just total outlier in so many ways, especially with regards to his age and his height. And also, he was just a pretty darn good MLB pitcher when he was over here pitching for the Washington Senators in the United States.
That's the craziest part, is that he came over at 38, did Marrero, and pitched well. Yeah, just kind of, threw the kitchen sink at him, was a short king there, maybe gave him a different look, being shorter on the mound there, and ended up putting up some good seasons, including this 1952 that we've highlighted here. And so there you go. There's the set of cards. You can see here from Barajas all the way to the MADDUX, and a lot of fun in between. I didn't put the MARRERO on there, but those are the cards that you can get. The Jeff Mathis mission. Bailey, I really appreciate you doing this with us. What have you got coming in the summer here for Foolish Bailey and Foolish Baseball?
Oh, Foolish Bailey, I have an interesting idea I'm kicking around. It's almost like a mini baseball bits to some degree, something that would be a little bit less workflow heavy, but yeah, I've got some interesting sort of like almost essay type ideas for Foolish Bailey. And then Foolish Baseball right now, I'm working on a video about someone who will hopefully join these ranks, right? Who will be sort of known as a niche Foolish Baseball-y type player, and I'm excited to talk to you all about why.
I love that. And I believe you have a Patreon that people can join too, yes?
That is correct. Patreon.com/foolishbaseball. You will get exclusive monthly video content on there. Every other month I do a Q&A, and then the months I don't do a Q&A, I do a video similar to what you would see on Foolish Bailey, except it's just for the Patreon crowd. So yeah, go check that out if you're really a big Foolish Baseball fan.
And who isn't, especially if you play OOTP. We do have a few minutes left. Would you be down to maybe take a few questions from the chat?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Chat, if you got some questions for Bailey, go ahead and hit him, and we'll see what he's going to say about some different things. We don't have a Tim Castro card. I saw that in the chat. I'm working on maybe getting one for the weekend. It was Mathis or Castro. Those were two. I thought you might mention him too. You mentioned David Fletcher. I thought you might bring up Castro. He's another player that you are heavily associated with. Tim Castro, total speedster. So anyway. Have you done Lou Burdett yet? What does that mean, Chess? I don't know what that means there. Infinitely disappointed in the lack of a tungsten arm O'Doyle. I mean, if we can just make a created player out of thin air, we can definitely do a tungsten arm. Cards are live, by
really
the way,
sad.
folks.
I'm really sad that I didn't come up with tungsten arm O'Doyle. I mean, hats off to that guy Matt Tomic who came up with it. Whenever the placeholder name I use in my head, or at least used to before Tungsten Armor Doyle, was like I would have this guy in my head named like Ironsides McGillicuddy or something like that. But now he's been completely replaced by Tungsten Armor Doyle.
That is very Tungsten Army though, so I really do like that. Jason Cleghorn says, what are your generalized thoughts about A, big haul versus small haul, and then B, the steroid era players with respect to the haul?
Yeah, I have a pretty nuanced take on the steroid era stuff. It's interesting. Like, here's an example, and I watched people kind of go through it with the Astros cheating scandal to some degree. People were really hurt. Like, they felt betrayed to some degree by guys, whether they deserved the criticism or not. And, eventually those guys will reach the ballot, and I don't think they'll have too much trouble getting in if they have the stats. But it was funny to see this generation of baseball fans, particularly those I would say younger than me, there's just so much anger and confusion about the Astros cheating scandal, but then they don't remember what it was like when the steroid stuff broke 20 years before that. And I remember, and I was a kid then, and I was crushed. Like, these were guys like McGuire and Bonds and all the Palmeiro, these were guys that I looked up to essentially, and I found out they were cheating. Now that I'm older, I of course have a more nuanced view of that, and I can recognize, hey, that's kind of on the league for not really testing these guys, and they were kind of operating, a lot of them, in a gray area. I would generally say if you were caught before like Mitchell Report and some of the strengthened testing stuff, that would be guys like it could be Bonds, then there's probably more sympathy for you than like an A-Rod type who should have known better. But overall, for the steroid stuff, I think I agree with the concept of almost like a steroid tax, which is you don't just get to be like a Hall of Famer. You have to be like an inner circle Hall of Famer type guy in order to get in as a steroid guy. So that would mean, yes, Bonds get in, yes, Clemens get in, yes, A-Rod get in, but maybe, Gary Sheffield doesn't.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. And I feel exactly the same way with regards to some initial outrage about it. But as I got older, realized, it's kind of on Major League Baseball a bit more. And I have a hard time, my main counterpoint whenever people say no Bonds or Clemens is you can't put Bud Selig in, the overseer of the whole thing. and then not have these guys in. That, to me, that just doesn't work. And so if he's going to be in, which I don't really agree he should be, I think the players deserve it more than he does. Way, way more. So I would rather they be in than him. But since Bud Selig's already in, I think you got to get those players in personally. Let's see here. Do you take credit? This is from Bullman UGA. Do you take credit for Spencer Strider's rather good year this year? Is that all you?
Yeah, that was on me. I mean,
thank you.
So I talked with him for about 40 minutes on Zoom, mostly about music. But yeah, I gave him some tips. I told him, maybe throw the change up a little bit more. Just try to nail down a third pitch, and it looked pretty good in his last start. And then the advice I also gave him was try throwing a baseball 100 miles per hour, because that's
works.
the type of coach I am.
Yeah. He's also a bit of a short king, right? I know, because listen here, if you're listed 6 feet, you're 5'10", right? Because if you were truly 6, you would put 6'2". This is just sports heights and how it works. If you're listed 6, you're not 6. So he's a short king out there. He's got a great mustache. I envy him as somebody with a dirt stash. But yeah, Strider's been amazing. Is he like a top 5 pitcher right now?
Yeah, I would say so. I actually just had a conversation with another person, sort of the baseball content creation community, and he asked me, who's the best starting pitcher in Major League Baseball right now? And Strider came to mind. I actually landed on McClanahan, but then he actually said, "Oh, I asked Strider himself, and Strider thinks it's either Fromber or Cole." So I mean, that's things are up in the air, but that's the type of conversation everyone's in, I think.
Fromber is out of his gourd right now, and when you got a guy like that who has the extreme ground ball and the stamina, and now he's adding strikeouts. It's over. Unfortunately, their hitting is not really coming along, so Houston's a little bit wonky right now, but it's not Fromber's fault. That is for sure. Nicolino, our very own Nicolino from OOTP asks, is there a player you want to feature in a video, but he just keeps getting pushed back?
Yeah, it would be Ben Zobrist, I think.
Ooh.
I've talked about doing a Ben Zobrist video a lot over the years. There were times where it was just kind of awkward timing, like he was in the news for some other stuff that was kind of unfortunate, and I didn't really want to draw too much attention to that. I think maybe when he is starting to hit like a Hall of Fame ballot, that might be an interesting time to go back and take a look at Ben Zobrist. I mean, I see someone putting the scare quotes other stuff. It's not something he did wrong.
It wasn't.
It happened. Yeah,
it was in his life. It wasn't something that he did. You weren't like he was, getting in trouble with the law or anything. But he had some negative stuff happening that you weren't trying to put a spotlight on by featuring him.
Exactly. So it's just kind of a bad timing thing. But yeah, I would love to take a look at Ben Zobrist's career when the time is appropriate.
Yeah, I think his career is so fascinating to me. I love players like that. And players like Ben Zobrist are the type of cards I love in this game, too. So we did our build a lineup set this year featuring switch hitters, and Ben Zobrist got cards that run the gamut. So you can use him on pretty much any team that he's been on at any level as well. Bailey, have you heard directly from Kutch about the Furries video? Another one of your best ever.
I've only heard indirectly. He was on a podcast with Ben Roethlisberger, of all people, and commented on it and said he had seen the video and pitched the idea of Furry Night at the ballpark.
It's fantastic.
That series is coming up, or I think it's actually it'll overlap with 2 series, but there is a Pirates homestand overlapping with the furry convention soon, so I can't wait. I hope he just tears it up and we get to go back and laugh even more at that type of video.
Yeah, I'm going to use Kutch in DFS, DraftKings stuff during that, because he kills it during the furries, and he doesn't make fun of them. He respects them. It's a great video. You got to check it out. Bailey broke down all of the success that McCutcheon has when furries are around. Let's see. Anything else here? Anybody else have any other questions for Bailey? Oh, this one's for all the marbles. Pitching War. Do you prefer Fangraphs or Baseball Reference? They are constructed a bit differently.
Oh, that's such a good question.
It is. Good job, Branch.
I'm gonna say for a single season sample size or smaller, I'm gonna prefer Fangraphs, and then for anything larger than that, I'm gonna say Baseball Reference War.
I thought you were gonna flip it, because for me, I like that Baseball Reference doesn't get as much on like the, what would have happened if you didn't have your luck, like it's smoothing out your luck and all that. Because when you're talking about like awards, if somebody has like a 2 ERA but like a 3.20 FIP, I don't really care that about the 320 FIP. He had a 2 ERA. Those are the results. That's what happened. I want that to be featured. I think Baseball Reference does a better job with that in a single season. So I'm actually kind of the reverse. In a single season, like awards voting situation, I kind of prefer Baseball References a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess maybe the better way of putting it is if I'm trying to be forward facing, like if I want to look to the future, I'm probably using Fangraphs War. And if I'm looking back at the past, which would include voting for an award at the end of the season, then maybe Baseball Reference War is the right one.
Okay, I think that's totally fair. We already talked about Stathead Baseball out front, Warbot. Anybody else have any questions? Well, we got Bailey for another couple minutes here. Bailey, by the way, are you doing anything for the All-Star game? Have you ever been to an All-Star game?
I've never been, and my status for this year is yet to be determined.
So that maybe means that maybe something could happen. It's in Seattle, right?
Yes, and I would really, I mean, if given the choice, I would rather attend the Derby versus the actual game, I think.
I got to go to the one in Cleveland, the Pete Alonso Vlad Jr. home run derby. Unbelievable. It was absolutely amazing. I enjoyed the All-Star game, but the home run derby was 10x better. And I know actually a lot of people go in for the derby and they're back home by the time the game starts. Like they're there specifically for the derby. So they have no problem going there just for that. That'd be great if you were there. Obviously, I'm sure people want to do partnerships with you and whatnot. So maybe you can get something working. That would be great. Somebody asked about Pete Rose. I actually don't know your thoughts on that. So while that is a usually well-trodden topic, I'm not 100% sure where you come out on Pete Rose with respect to the Hall of Fame.
I keep him out,
I'm with that.
Yeah. He has some, it's not just the gambling thing. He has some other questionable stuff in his personal life. And also I want to say there's sort of this, he lied through every step of the process. Like even when he got busted, he said, okay, well, I did do that, but I didn't do this. And then it would come out years later that he did in fact do that. And then, if anyone is still pro Pete Rose, I would encourage them to look into the career of Mario Soto, who Rose managed and sort of, it seemed like maybe some of his bets were affecting his pitcher usage, and it effectively ended his very promising career early.
Yeah, and I've never been on the whole he only bet on his team to win, so it's fine. That you're still altering the integrity of the game and how he was managing those games versus regular games, and he's just an utter scumbucket otherwise too. So there's just no reason to really cape for Pete Rose. Any final question? Maybe we can end one on a high note here instead of talking about.
I want to answer this one from Mike Teamkill. He's who asks if Bailey was a closer in Major League Baseball, what would his walkout music be? Why is it something from Mighty Mighty Boston? This is actually a reference to when Edwin Diaz was doing the trumpet thing. I jokingly did a video where I just dubbed over the song, the impression that I get with the trumpets, with him walking out. I recently, and I was not a closer, but I recently played a sort of pros versus Joes type game. My walk-up music was Megalovania from the Undertale soundtrack. However, this is what I feel very strongly about. I feel like this is this would be just a golden song to pick. If I were an MLB closer, here's what I would do. I would pitch for the Texas Rangers, and I would walk out to the song Big Iron by Marty Robbins.
I think that's because
fantastic. The whole song is about the Texas Ranger with the big iron on his hip.
There you go. So you're only signing if the Rangers will sign you. So if they don't, you're out, is what you're saying?
Yeah, and I'm pitching the 9th inning. Exclusively.
Yeah, that's true. You're just usurping. Bochy says, okay, we got you in the 6th. No, it's 9th inning or don't sign me is what you're saying here. I think that's fair.
Yes.
That's totally fair. All right, Bailey, let's go ahead and wrap up there. Where can people find you?
I think you can find me a lot of places. Foolish Baseball and Foolish Bailey on YouTube, at Foolish BB on Twitter. I'm on TikTok now, Foolish Bailey on TikTok. And then, if you really like all that, then patreon.com/foolishbaseball.
There you go. Check it out. Bailey, thank you so much for being with us. I look forward to your future OOTP content, as well as, of course, your baseball bits and Foolish Bailey. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. We'll get you over to Laptop Hound, who is streaming right now. Pop a raid on over there, and we'll catch up with you later. Next week, Dish will be back, so don't worry. He'll be back. He's out in Singapore right now. We wish him luck with everything going on with his announcing for the Olympics. And